Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Monday, July 10th, 2023. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'd like to invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Before we get started, I am going to ask my colleagues if we could move 9.2, which is to act on participation in open choice, to number 5 on the agenda. The reason is this, to help us with our discussion, we have Dr. Rydell Harrison with us, and I want to give him an opportunity to get home. He has a long trip home. It's wonderful that he's joined us. I'm going to entertain, if I could, a motion to move 9.2 up to follow number 4.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. So the first, and the other thing I'm just going to note for the public, so we have the 6 board members present here. We have Dr. Hirsch joining us remotely. Because of that, when I take votes, this is per statute, when I take votes that are not unanimous, or in the case tonight, when I take votes that are going to be, unlike minutes, a little higher level, I am going to be doing a roll call so that we make sure that we get everybody, all the board members accounted for. So just wanted to give that explanation. So first, I want to entertain a motion to approve the June 12th, 2023 Board of Ed minutes.
So moved.
So moved, okay.
Second.
Second. Any corrections?
I just have one typo on page 8 of those minutes.
Okay.
It starts with Miss Scarpolino commented on a book called Mr. Earl.
Oh, yep, it's
That
me
should
and
be
Earl.
me and Earl.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. I had one at the bottom of page 3 under Guilford High School. That first bullet, I believe should read, seniors had their senior outing, senior breakfast, and awards and scholarship night, awards instead of rewards. And then on page 7, under public questions, again, the first section, Ms. Scarpolino speaking. When Ms. Scarpolino was here at our Board of Ed meeting last week, during this part of public comment, I had noted to her that I had been copied on an email that was sent to her with an explanation around the Dr. Seuss book she was talking about. I was mistaken. I was misremembering that to be an email that was sent to another constituent. So I did send an email to Ms. Scarpolino to apologize for that misstatement on my part. And then for the record, what I'd like to do, second to the last line of that paragraph, is to remove "and an explanation was provided to Ms. Scarpolino," because again, that references my misstatement. So I do want to correct the record there. Are there any other corrections to these minutes? No? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving these minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Abstaining.
Ms.
I was not
Ms.
here.
Rader is abstaining. Dr. Hirsch, is that an aye from you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay,
You're
thank
on-
you.
He's on mute.
Yes.
Okay, so we have, that's 6 in favor and 1 abstaining. Thank you. All right. May I have a motion to approve the June 14th, 2023 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions about these? kind of quick. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Wonderful, that's unanimous, thank you. All right, we are now at the part of the agenda for public forum for topics on the board agenda. If anybody would like to speak to the board on a topic on the board agenda, I welcome you up to the podium and ask you to give your name and address. All right, I'm seeing none. Thank you. So we are then going to go to 9.2, which we've just voted to move. I'd like to invite Dr. Harrison to come up and join us, if you would. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
And Dr. Balistraci, if we can invite Mr. Scanziano to join us
Oh,
at the table
absolutely.
again as well.
Anyone who would,
Yeah, absolutely.
come on.
Hi.
Wonderful to see you. So
Long way around.
I know. Jason's going around. So this is an opportunity, we've been talking about open choice at our meetings for the last several meetings. Last month at the Board of Ed meeting, we discussed wanting to hear a little bit more and have a little more discussion. We also wanted to wait on a vote in case members of the public wanted to reach out to us about this. I know I have not received any communications in the last month. I'm not aware that any of my
I have not.
colleagues have. Okay. But I do want to turn it over to you, Dr. Freeman, to kind of lead us through a little bit of further discussion before the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate to have the opportunity to have this conversation again. I received one follow-up email after our last meeting, and it was the next day. It was from one of the one of the constituents who had sent in questions, and she was writing simply to say that she appreciated the conversation, she thought that it was a helpful conversation, and she felt better moving forward. I know that at the last board meeting, there was interest expressed in having Dr. Harrison be part of the conversations. I referenced some planned teacher learning that we have sketched out for next year. So, Rydell, thank you. Appreciate you being able to be here. I think there were some further questions about special education. I know that Mr. Scanziano has had the opportunity to look into some of those questions that were raised. And I know that there was an interest in having teacher voice be part of this conversation as well. I do need to let you know that Mrs. Sullivan was planning on joining us here tonight, and her plans changed just this afternoon, and she is not going to be joining us this evening. I have spoken to her about this topic on multiple occasions, and she asked me to please share our conversations and her thoughts on this topic with all of you tonight, and so I'm prepared to do that, and I do apologize that Regina's not here to have that conversation with you herself. Remember, Mrs. Sullivan, in addition to being a teacher here at the high school, is also the president of the Guilford Education Association, and so I thought she'd be a perfect person to have be part of this conversation. Not sure beyond that where to start.
Right.
I don't know if we want to open it up for questions and conversation, or if you'd like each of the three of us to sort of make an opening,
I think I might suggest, unless someone has a pressing question, ask just each of, if you would represent or share
Sure.
with us what Ms. Sullivan was going to say. Dr. Harrison, if you would just speak about your thoughts about the program, that would be terrific. And then Mr. Scanziano, if you have anything to add, I know we had an opportunity to talk to you a little bit before, but welcome your thoughts as well.
So I did speak with Mrs. Sullivan, and she wanted to start by thanking the board for asking about the teacher position and all of this. And she very much appreciates how this board does consider the teacher perspective. And I know that there has been a lot on teacher plates in Guilford and everywhere in the last 3 or 4 years. Regina was prepared to talk with you all and to very candidly point out that teachers were not polled or surveyed or asked their opinion about this. And she doesn't believe that that would have been an appropriate way to move forward. She sees this not as an instructional decision, but as a policy decision. And as the policy-making body, this board would be the board to make that kind of decision. She also really recognizes the way that we have scaled this rollout. Remember that in September of '24, we expect to be inviting about half a dozen students, opening up about 6 seats in first grade, where we will begin with one small cohort, and then that will grow. As in year 2, we invite students to first and fifth grade, and in year 3, we would invite students to first and fifth and ninth grade, continuing to roll that out. Regina also recognizes that this is a logical next step in the conversation and in the work that we've been doing around equity and social justice issues here in the Guilford Public Schools. From changing our mascot here at the high school, to talking about building safe and brave classrooms, to talking about really actively working on diversifying our teacher workforce. But diversifying the student population through an existing program is a healthy and a positive thing for students to do. I believe Regina's bottom line is she can't think of a single teacher in the Guilford Public Schools who would speak against moving in this direction. Now, none of that is to suggest that this isn't going to be more for the teachers to be working on, but it's the right work to be doing. We'll be inviting students into our classrooms who will benefit from being here, and who will benefit all of their classmates already here in Guilford by creating a more diverse environment, so that our students aren't just talking about more diverse environments, but that we're making every effort we can to help them experience more diverse environments. Regina also recognizes that there is more work to do, and I think that one of the concerns that was raised when we talked about this last month was, are we ready to support those students? I keep saying yes, and we will be. And I think Regina recognizes the importance of not opening up these seats in September of '23, but opening up these seats in September of '24. We've been doing work. We've got continuing work with Dr. Harrison. In fact, I'm excited because the work with Dr. Harrison is going to be more directly in front of teachers next year than it has been in our first 2 years working with Rydell. We're continuing our work with the Ed Ethics group from Harvard. We've got a really sophisticated plan built for next year to help us be ready. We're going to be working with districts like Cheshire or Farmington or Simsbury who just have more experience with the Open Choice program. The last thing that I'll paraphrase for Regina was she reminded me that we've been doing just this on a smaller scale at the high school for decades with the ABC House, and that this is not completely new to Guilford, but it's taking what has historically been a 9 through 12 opportunity and making it a 1 through 12 opportunity by partnering with Open Choice and ACES. So Regina would have said that probably better than I, but I am happy to share for her tonight. And if I got any of it wrong, I guarantee you she will let me know.
She will let you know. Does anyone have questions for Paul representing Regina?
I think specific to that last point, it's exactly where I've been, thinking. We have been doing this, and I think, if anything now, we're doing it at the right age, where it's more impactful to these students. So it's a point well made by Regina.
Wonderful. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here. So I want to be able to wear a number of hats in this conversation. So
Okay.
the first is as the family equity liaison, and so I immediately think about this from a family perspective, right? So thinking about the existing families in Guilford, but also thinking about the experiences of these new families that will be coming in fall of 2024. And so, I think about what kind of infrastructure is already kind of set here in Guilford to be able to support families. I think that having this position as a family equity liaison is huge. I think that it provides an opportunity for the newer families to be able to have someone that they could talk to, that they could help, that could help them sort of navigate their experience, which is often one of the big challenges. So I feel really excited about this opportunity for this district from that standpoint. Then there's my hat outside of my work in Guilford, where I get to do all this fantastic consulting work around the district or around the state, and I work with a number of districts that are open choice districts. Specifically working very closely with equity directors in those districts, And so being able to learn from them, what were some of the things that you did to kind of ramp up and ready yourselves? What was some of the, if you could go back now, what would you do differently? One of the districts that I'm working with, and Dr. Freeman mentioned a number of districts that they'll continue to work with in thinking about next steps. But one of the districts that stands out for me is South Windsor, and they have a very strong, high population of open choice students. And I was just working this past year with their equity director to do a study of parents' experience. So looking at specifically their open choice families, doing individual interviews with all of the open choice parents to see what's your experience been like. Again, what led you to make this shift for your child, and what could we do as a district to support you better? And so it's nice to be able to learn from that and be able to kind of behind the scenes say, hey, listen, here are some of the lessons from South Windsor and from Farmington and from Simsbury and all these other places. Here's some things that we could learn, and let's make sure that we add that into the discussions as we're doing the teacher PD. And then the last hat that I wear is I'm a former superintendent with an open choice program. And so having been on the receiving end of those students and watching my teachers and their ability to navigate some of the challenges, they had the tools that they need to be able to do that. But more importantly, what they saw as the benefit was the positive impact on the current existing students in the district. Because as Dr. Freeman mentioned, we talk a lot about creating these really diverse experiences for our students and wanting them to be ready for the world. And so if we could create some classroom opportunities for them to learn alongside of people whose experiences might be a little bit different than theirs, it's a great learning opportunity, I think, on both sides. When Paul asked if I was available to be here tonight to be able to answer some questions, one of the things I said was, well, if Guilford isn't ready, I don't think any district is. And it's not because as a district we do everything perfect, but I think that we are asking the right questions. That we are, as a district, you have fantastic leaders who are not so arrogant to believe that we already know everything. And so it puts us in a real learning posture, which allows us to continue to develop over time, but then also really zooming in with students and with their families to say, are we meeting your needs, and what do we need to do differently? So I think that there's some definitely some a great opportunity to do some prep work before fall of 2024, but then after that as well, by starting with 6 students, that gives you a lot of opportunity to really learn and be able to make adjustments along the way. So I'm happy to, with any of those 3 hats, be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Questions? For Dr. Harrison, anything?
I think one of my concerns was just the climate of our schools.
Yep.
And in your time since you've joined us in Guilford, I mean, can you share anecdotally, without compromising any confidentiality, like a sense of families that have, like, do you feel like we're in a good space, or are you confident that the work that needs to be done to get us ready for this program? I know, to Regina's point, this exists already at the high school.
Right.
So maybe you can share a sense of that.
Sure. So what I would say is, so I talk with districts all the time, and I say, what makes you a good district is not that these challenging things don't happen ever. It is how you respond to them. And so what I've been really pleased to see over the last 2 years is the ways in which our leaders respond when issues come up. That they are very thoughtful, very reflective, and it is very clear that they want to get it right? And so in talking with parents recognize that. And so even when I've talked to parents who have been, well, I was going to say that I don't usually get calls from people who just want to say good things, but that's not true. I've gotten a couple of parent phone calls to just say, hey, I don't know who needs to hear this, but thanks for thinking in the right direction, or thanks for being really supportive. And that's not thanks to me, that's thanks to all of the folks who are on the ground doing the work on a daily basis. So, but what I've heard from parents is an appreciation for the willingness to respond, for the willingness to have some difficult conversations, and for the willingness to be able to have some open discussion about, here's what we need to learn and here's what we're still learning, and being able to check in like, hey, how are we doing? Are we getting that right? And I think that, so the one hat that I didn't mention that I always have on is my parent hat. And so I listen for our teachers, our administrators, our leaders, asking the questions or taking the position that I would want to hear as a parent, right? And then being able to have some of that informal discussion with some of our families to say like, hey, I thought that was really good. Like, what'd you think? And they're like, yeah, we're happy with that. Or also this sense of, I've had a couple of experiences of, initially this sense of, well, Dr. Harrison, we're going to be meeting with this administrator, and we kind of want you to be in the room. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll be there if you need me to be there. But then realizing that, like, oh, maybe that's not absolutely necessary, because we get the sense that we're not fighting against administration, right? There's a willingness to partner with us. And I think that willingness to partner with families, particularly your families who have been historically marginalized, I think that willingness is what really positions you as a district to be ready to take this next step.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Other questions?
I just had a question about, you're talking about you're learning some information from parents who are already participating in this. And so, we talk about the families here and having them be engaged and supportive, but what are some of the things that we as a district can do in terms of outreach to the families who will be trusting us by sending their children?
Sure, yes.
Bring them into the community.
Absolutely. So I think that's it right there,
Yeah.
right? And I think that in one of the districts that I have been working with, one of the things that they got back from their families, this sense of, they had a real sense of gratitude that folks were reaching out to see, like, what was your experience? And what almost felt a little bit like a critique was, we wish you had done it before, right? Don't wait don't wait for us to bring concerns or to bring our experiences. Reach out to us, right? And so I think that one of the things that we'll want to talk about over the next school year is, how do we proactively make those connections with families? Because one of the things that I realize is a part of the reality of going to a different district than where you live for school, even if it's a magnet program. And so as a magnet principal, I experienced this. As a parent of magnet kids, my kids experienced this, that the after school ball games, the weekend sleepovers, like all of those things that make you feel like a part of the community, sometimes are missing just because you don't live right down the street, right? And so going into that and thinking about how are we intentionally helping students to make the connections and build those positive relationships, but more importantly, how do we bring the families in and do that as well? And I think that there are some really creative ways to do that. But I think a lot of it is just, when you have these first 6 families, hey, like, what do you need from us, right? And really just being able to make it really feel like a grassroots effort that feels very intentional and very genuine, right? Versus like, hey, we have this ready-made Welcome to Guilford program for all you new parents to come in, and this is all we got, so you better get on board with this, or you're kind of floating on your own. But to think about, how do we tailor that experience to make sure that there's that connection.
I just want to say, the only concerns that I've heard from the public have been, make sure we get it right.
Yes.
And so hearing you tonight makes me feel an awful lot better, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here, and please make sure we get it right.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dick.
Could you Dr. Harrison, could you give us some examples from the various districts you've seen, including your own, either vexing problems or unanticipated problems that have cropped up that we should at least in theory, be aware of?
Sure. So I think the obvious one that people think about a lot is around after-school activities, right? Like that's just life is different when you're having to get on 95 to go home versus cutting through the back roads after you leave school. So so I think that one of the pieces that will have to be kind of always at the forefront of your mind is around access, right? So access to programs, access to after-school opportunities, that we want these students to have the full Guilford experience, right? And we all know that the full Guilford experience is not just from 8:30 to 3:30, right? It is a 24-hour experience. And so how do we open up some avenues to make some of those connections? I think that's something to think about. I also think about that when I've seen it, let me say it this way: where it's been a little bit of a challenge is when it's not seen as a reciprocal benefit, right? So when it feels like charity work, right? Like, oh, look at, like, we're so good, we're allowing you to have this great learning experience, and so it feels like a gift. That doesn't feel good for anyone, right? And so I think that, one of the first things that Paul said tonight was talking about kind of the mutual benefit for students who be coming as open choice students, but also for our existing students as well. And I think that's a place to keep at the forefront of the thinking. And I think that's not just important from the student perspective, right? But also from the instructional perspective, right? That there's a lot that our teachers are going to learn just by having different kinds of learners in their classroom. And it's important to reiterate over and over that this is a benefit for all of us. And this is who our community is. And then the other thing is, I think that it's important to think about like terminology, right? So, you don't want to have like, oh, these are the Guilford students and these are the open choice kids, right? Because once you walk through that door, regardless of what school it is or what your address is, you're a Guilford student. And I think that while you want to be responsive to the unique needs that might be present in with your open choice families and those students, you want to make sure that there is a real clear embracing of them as full participants of what it means to be a Guilford student.
This is backwards. My apologies. In case Dr. Hurst's question didn't get heard, the question was, what are some of the more vexing issues that we might see or other districts have seen that we would want to think about ahead of time? And I'll be better about repeating that first. Anybody else? Did you have a question, or did
That was
you?
actually the exact
You
question
got
I
it.
was going to ask, so that was
Excellent.
very convenient. I do have one more, I guess, maybe more for like the Regina type person. I've talked to folks in other districts who, in districts who already include open choice students, and they have said it's such a great benefit for the kids who are in the program, and that the district kind of just naturally absorbs them without really even noticing that these kids are joining, like that we can seamlessly integrate these kids into the district. And then I've heard from Guilford teachers, a teacher really, one, saying, I'm really worried because I don't feel that we can handle anything else. Like, we're feeling a little bit overwhelmed as it is, and I worry about having kind of a new program and something new that we're also having to learn how to handle added into that. So I don't really know if that's a question, it's just kind of an observation. How do you think Regina would respond to that, or how do you think like the teachers in general would respond to that?
I'm just going to go ahead and answer it for myself, rather than trying to speak for Regina. But I think that, one, this board is good at and needs to always recognize and value when we hear a statement like that made from a teacher, right? Teachers are dealing with a lot. I think, however, as the leadership in the school district, we also need to remind ourselves that we can't ever wait for the perfect moment of readiness before we take the next important step, because we never reach the perfect moment of readiness. We're just, and whether we're talking about full-day kindergarten or IB programming or any of the important work that we've done previously, public education is always a work in progress. And I know that we're not going to get to hear a presentation on coaching tonight, but one of the pieces that Dr. Goss was going to share with you about coaching is that instructional coaching is about helping teachers to develop as learners more than it is to help them develop as instructors. And our coaching cohort helped our teachers survive the pandemic more nimbly and more successfully than in districts where they didn't have that kind of professional support. Dr. Harrison talked about the fact that we're going to be as ready as we can for September of '24, but we're not going to stamp it and be done. We're going to keep learning through that. So as the leaders in the district, we need to hear those teachers, we need to validate those concerns, and we need to remind them that we're going to go slowly and thoughtfully, and you're going to be surrounded by support. But we can't wait until we're perfectly ready, because we'll never be perfectly ready. So I think what Regina would say is, you're as ready as anybody is ever going to be, and the teachers in this district, when they sit back and they think about it, know that they're supported and that we're going to help them grow through this. We're probably talking in year one about 3 to 4 first grade teachers who will be the front line of this, who will then help us grow that out as we're not going to be opening seats in kindergartens that are full or near full. We're only going to be opening first grades rather. We're only going to be opening seats where we know there's space. Right. We're going to focus our supports on those vanguard teachers. And while we're focusing supports on them, Rydell's going to be working with every teacher in the district from August through March next year, and we're continuing to build those supports in with the group at Harvard. So when I hear a teacher say that, I listen, I validate, I try to understand what the concerns are, and then I try to help them see that we're going to be okay. But we can't wait until we're perfectly confident before we take the next important step.
Yeah. And my argument would be, we have to be ready. It's not a matter of if we're ready, we have to be, because an open choice student is no different than any student that's in our community already right now. We have to be prepared for these students. And so we are ready.
But I appreciate Noel's comment, and I'm really glad that this board pushed to have Rydell be part of this conversation, because what you heard over and over and over wasn't, it's easy and we're going to nail it and it's that we're going to do it because it's right, and we're going to learn through it, which is the Guilford way of doing things, right? And I didn't hear Noel say, I don't have any more concerns. I heard him say, I feel better after having listened to the way you talked about it. That would be my hope, that when a teacher brings that kind of concern to me, that they leave saying, all right, Paul didn't fix every worry, but I feel better after having talked to him, or hopefully listening to this response.
Thank you.
Jason, did you have, we had some discussion last month. Did you have something
Yes,
you wanted
absolutely.
to add? Or and then people may have questions for you as well.
More information for you all. At the
Okay.
last board meeting, I was asked to go back and look at projected caseloads for the upcoming school year. And so I, along with the special education coordinators, looked at each of our buildings and did a ratio of staff to students who are identified as special education students. For the 23-24 school year, again, I can't project 24-25 yet, but 23-24, we are one special ed teacher to every 9 to 9.5 students. At our elementary, we are one special education teacher to every 9.25 students. As a general rule, most of our elementaries have 3 full-time special ed teachers serving the population. Calvin Leet, being a smaller school, has 2 for the upcoming school year. And that is just special education teachers. That is not the related service staff, which includes full-time social worker. Most have a full-time school psychologist, speech and language pathologist, full-time at every building, occupational therapist, et cetera. to
Jason,
support
just to put that in some context, without getting really detailed, what are those numbers like compared to other districts or statewide? I know we don't run those numbers in statewide.
Yes, so our prevalence rate is significantly lower than districts of a similar demographic, reference group, or DIRG. When I polled shoreline communities, we are significantly less than some of our neighbors in our ratios. Generally, they're ranging from 11 to 13, so a 1 to 9 ratio is a good ratio to have. We have seen, as I mentioned, just a general increase in student identification post-COVID, and so, we're anticipating, the
Absolutely.
same. So,
Right, which is happening across the country,
Across the
unfortunately.
country, absolutely.
And again, I want to make sure that I note that while these are really important questions, the placement through the choice program is done through a lottery.
Absolutely.
And there's no way that we would know what the special ed prevalence would be, but there's no reason that we should anticipate that all 6 of the seats that we open are going to be filled by students with special needs. That's, right, there's just no way to anticipate. But we have the capacity to make this
I have
offer.
no doubt.
Yep.
And state the obvious, any family moving into the district next year could have one or
Yes.
more. That's just a reality for anybody coming in.
If anything, the choice program, because of the collaborative nature of the PPTs and New Haven's share of the responsibility, the students who come to us through the choice program, we share any special ed responsibility with New Haven compared to any family who moves into the Guilford community. We own that special education responsibility fully.
Are there other questions, comments for any of our guest speakers here?
I have some follow-up questions. Thank you very much for putting that together
You're welcome.
tonight. So I guess what drove that question was just some feedback we'd had in the past few months that caseloads had grown a lot, and I know that you had shared that previously as well. So this appears that there was a really light caseload in the past, and it's just gradually creeped toward.
No, we've been adding staff.
Okay.
So as identification, remember, we added unbudgeted special ed positions this year, and we're already planning to add an unbudgeted special education position next year.
I think that's what drove, yeah.
Yes.
It was just because we, one of the benefits of choice is in theory the shared cost,
Yes.
that we won't have to hire, but the concern is just like, it appears that we're already as a district on our own having this urge to and need to hire, so that's where I just wanted to.
Understood.
That's a really good question. So yes, our identifications have increased, but so has our special education staffing over the last 2 or 3 budget cycles.
All right. Dr. Hirsch, I just want to make sure I give you an opportunity. Do you have any additional questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right.
I will once again then say that I really, really appreciate the thoughtfulness and the thoroughness of this conversation, which began prior to the pandemic, which we've been talking about this year really specifically since a meeting back at Baldwin. And Mr. Grimm, by the way, apologizes for not being able to be here tonight, but he was on it. Mr. Grimm was going to join us tonight as well,
wow.
and
Okay.
and had a prior responsibility. I really do appreciate the thoughtfulness and the thoroughness of the conversation, and am really very proud to be asking you tonight to approve Guilford's participation in the Open Choice Program to begin in September of 2024, if the board feels ready to make that determination tonight. But that is my request.
Okay. I am ready. Is someone ready to make a motion in that direction?
I guess I would just like to discuss it a little further as a board. I mean, I think, to Arnold's point, last meeting, I think kicking the can was used as a term, but I don't doubt that there's a single one of us here tonight that at this point are fully in support of this. I think we've all always known that this is something we care very much about and look forward to. I think my only concern is the information that was just shared tonight was so beneficial clearly for all of us to hear that I just wish we could allow the general public more time to have a chance to hear it as well. I mean, it's the summer, people are on vacation. I'm not sure how many people are actively tuned in right now to our YouTube feed. that's my only concern, that and that we're not a full board tonight with such a meaningful, impactful decision for our district.
I think it's a valid concern. I would argue that the kicking of the can did us no good, right?
Well,
We
for
heard
us,
from,
it's great information for the public to hear.
aside from
Yeah.
that, but in terms of, hearing
board,
hearing
yeah.
from anyone,
I know.
we didn't. And that was the idea, was there's an additional month to be able to hear from people. I think what we heard tonight from me was only, a stronger case of why we need to be doing this now. And I don't think as a board that we delay this any further. I think we've had an opportunity to discuss as a board. I think we've all been able to talk amongst ourselves about it. And I think a vote is what we owe the public. So.
And I appreciate Dr. Harrison, you saying if Guilford isn't ready, then nobody is ready. And I really value, because you have been in our community for 2 years now. And I feel that we can all think we know our community, but it takes a perspective like yours, who came in at a really challenging time for us, I think, and we've really appreciated tonight just sitting here with you and you being really practical with us about kind of where we were and where we've come and where we can go. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
And
me too.
I'm excited that you're going to be literally hand-holding us through this process too, because I think we can all have good intentions, but we need different perspectives. And so, I think we could talk about this for a long time, the community. I wish we had heard more from the community. I appreciate that it's summer, but to your point, we have been talking about this for years, and I think we have to take a leap of faith and that's why we were voted to be here at this table, and hopefully we all feel comfortable enough to just take that next step and vote tonight. But I can understand the apprehension, but I also think we just kind of have to take that leap because we've kind of been told we're ready, so let's hope.
I've really appreciated the presentations. I think that the district did a great job, including this evening's presentation. I'm really grateful to hear from Regina, sort of, from Dr. Harrison, and the reflections on our current special ed load. For me, I really needed to hear that to feel comfortable, and I do. I feel very comfortable going forward with a vote. I think we've done a good job kind of allowing people to give us feedback. I think we've done a good job talking to other districts who are already engaged in this program. So I do feel comfortable going forward after hearing all of the things that we've heard this evening.
Okay. I'm hearing that more than others, so I will entertain a motion if someone is ready to make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so a motion to approve Guilford Public Schools becoming an open choice school. I've heard a motion and a second. All in favor? I am going to do this
Yeah,
as a
roll
voice
call.
vote. Dr. Hirsch?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Petra?
Yes.
Ms. Peck?
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Rader?
Yes.
Mr. Delmaturo?
Yes.
Ms. Faulkner?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So that is a unanimous vote. I am really, really excited about this.
I just want to say again, I'm really proud of this board. I very much appreciate the way that you took time, demanded time, asked for the voices that we didn't bring to you. I just so much appreciate the way this board moves forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being here. And Jason, thank you for being here again. This is just really exciting, and I'll speak for myself, I would like to learn as we all are learning moving forward. And really, I think it's just important, I think I speak for my colleagues, that we do this as well as we can, knowing that we'll be learning along the way. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So back on the agenda, we're at number 5, review and approval of expenditures for the month. Mr. Petra, can you just give us a high-level report on the financials?
Sure. So our expenditures for the month of June 2023 were $9,109,401.66. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of June were 99.94% of the budget, as compared to 99.49% in the 21-22 year.
Perfect.
So we are on budget.
Yes, thank you, yeah. We did have an extensive discussion in the Operations Committee meeting, just prior to this meeting, going through the financial reports and the warrants. This is a time of year where Mrs. Trudeau is working really hard as we close out one academic year and start another. But I will open up to my colleagues if there are any questions or comments before we vote on the financials. Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the June 2023 financial reports for fiscal year 22-23?
So,
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Did I get everybody? Okay, excellent, that's unanimous, thank you. All right. Number 6 is communications. Does anybody on the board have a communication to share on any topic received over the last month? None?
quiet.
I'm very quiet, summer.
Okay. Number 7, student representatives. We have no report tonight. The students are enjoying, I hope, their summer vacation. So number 8, superintendent's report. Dr. Freeman.
Thank you, and I need to start with an apology. It appears that as we shut down for summer, some of the technology infrastructure has been taken out of the room, so we're going to track that down. We do not have the video component of the coaching presentation that Dr. Goss was going to deliver to tonight. I'd rather delay that and have it done properly and well, because it's a well done and a helpful presentation. So we're going to table that. We're going to hold that, which we'll just make
Put it
tonight's.
on the agenda for August then?
Yes, we'll put it
Okay.
on your next regular meeting.
Okay.
I do, however, want to spend just a few minutes talking about elementary world language moving forward into next year. And then I have one additional item that I'd like to add if the board would entertain that. The board is aware, and I think that some of our community is aware, that this year we were only able to offer world language at 2 of our 4 elementary schools. We have 2 full-time positions for world language teachers at the elementary level, and this year we were only able to fill one of those positions successfully. At the 2 sister schools, we offered an alternative experience related to some STEM activities that, to be honest, we pulled together at the last moment because we were unable to fill that world language position. The board is aware that world language is an area of shortage in the state of Connecticut. It is across the country, and we've been struggling to fill those positions. As of this moment, we currently have 2 vacancies for elementary level next year. We're not moving in the right direction, we're moving in the wrong direction. We still, at this moment, have an unfilled world language position at this high school as well. Dr. Goss met with the elementary principals one final time today. We've been talking about this for some time, and at this point, our plan to move forward is to pull back and to regroup. And we have a plan moving forward for next year where we will not be offering world language at any of the 4 elementary schools. We will be increasing the contact time in music and in PE and in art. We are going to, the positions still exist in the budget. There are still 2 FTEs for world language, but we're going to reach out to some other districts who are struggling with the same challenges in staffing these positions. We're going to look at maybe some creative opportunities to offer world language experience, maybe through contracted rather than certified programming. We're just going to pull back, and we're going to take the year to reassess and determine the best way to move forward. My concern is that the alternative is that if we said, just keep the posting open and keep trying to hire and open the school year with substitutes, is that now what we're doing is holding a block of time and not building anything into that time that is thoughtful and valuable and pre-planned, while we're crossing our fingers and hoping to solve a problem that over the last year has gotten more challenging, not better. We have been posting for a year. We've been looking at candidates. We've been meeting people. The choices are limited, and we're not satisfied that we've got the right candidates in the pipeline right now. So we're going to focus on filling the high school position. Like I said, we're going to take next year to offer more contact time in art, music, and PE. We're not just going to do more time in the core classroom. That would be valuable as well, but we want to replace this with those other experiences, those other special experiences. And we'll be talking with you as the year unfolds about what our plan is for moving forward. I want to make it really clear that this is not a proactive instructional decision that we're making. This is very much a reaction to the challenges of the teacher shortage in this shortage area. We're making a compromise this year to figure out how to move forward in the best way possible. And we believe that doing that now, thoughtfully, is better than crossing our fingers and keeping vacancies and hoping to fill them as the year gets closer or even begins. We tried that this year for 2 of the 4 schools, and it did not work successfully.
I have perhaps a question you can't answer and one that is not going to help the situation currently, but, I mean, are we seeing fewer teacher graduates in world language coming out of schools? Like, this seems like, right? I mean,
Yes.
is that, Amity is
We're seeing-
nodding her head.
We're seeing fewer teacher graduates holistically, and that problem is exacerbated in some areas like special education and world language.
Okay.
And-
Just because, right, I mean, the pandemic has created problems across the board. We've had this problem for a little while, but this seems a little bit extraordinary, where we're literally not offering a program to our kindergarten through 4th graders because literally we don't have someone we feel qualified to do it.
Yeah, and that feels new and unprecedented in Guilford. It's not in the state of Connecticut.
No, I don't think so,
Yeah, what's
yeah.
happening is that realities that more urban communities have been experiencing for years are
Okay.
pushing into districts like Guilford and
ours.
communities like Guilford, and we're beginning to make forced choices that we have been insulated from for years, and we're less insulated from those choices now.
When we're talking about world language at K through 4, what time is allocated for world language in those classrooms? Like, what are we looking at as we now have a block of time in which we need to get creative with, obviously. To your point, we're not getting rid of it, we're just kind of adapting for the time being. But what are we looking at, like, on a daily, weekly basis?
I believe it was 60 minutes per week.
Yes. So students at the elementary were having 1 experience a week. Remember, we had half of a position at each of the 4 elementary schools.
Okay.
So students were experiencing a 50 to 60-minute block once a week that now will be rolled into a rotating schedule of an extra PE class or an extra art class or an extra something in that week.
And, I mean, this is my ignorance speaking, but, is there, are we seeing other districts, other schools, maybe implementing technology as a means to distribute world language to kids, with the primary teacher, being in control of that, right? I mean, we all know about all the apps that exist that we could use at any moment to learn a language. We know that technology is super powerful in order to make that work. I
Yes,
watched my
and
daughter learn Italian in a matter of months, basic Italian, before a trip. Are we missing an opportunity to maybe prepare for what the future looks like, in which we don't have world language teachers, but we still need to teach a basic world language to our K through 4 students?
It's exactly one of the items on the list to be explored next year. Do we look at using, again, some kind of contract or program or technology that offers it in a way that is different than a certified position? There will be some contract implications related to that.
Sure.
The teachers' union will be a part of that conversation. We want to be careful that we're not suggesting that AI or a program is as effective, but we want to be,
Better than
but it is
nothing.
one of the items on the list that we need to look at more carefully.
Is there any benefit to, and we have like Otois Palms in Guilford, and we have a couple like language, independently run language schools. When you talk about is there any idea of maybe partnering with them? Maybe it's not 60 minutes a week, but maybe there's enrichment, all the PTOs typically do enrichment, but maybe.
All 4 of my boys went to Otois Palm, and yes, that's also one of the conversations that is on the list, to see if there's a way to partner again, sort of through a contract, and figure out how we would create that or how we could offer that. There's also some implications at the state level. We will need to look into what this involves at the state level around certification requirements. Those might be easier to manage at the elementary level than they would be at a high school level where it's credit bearing. But yes, also one of the ideas on the list.
And just so our viewing public understands exactly the implications of this, we're talking about at the current staffing levels for this upcoming year, no K through 4 world language, but still maintaining it at 5 through 12.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
And would you help me remember, did we at one point have a full-time language teacher at each elementary?
We did, just a few years ago.
So I feel like, right, I mean, this is a
Yeah.
trend, right? Because
Yeah.
when Dr. Goss said 60 minutes, I remember years ago it being more in a given week, but it was, I mean, already we've been handling this trend for a while.
Well, and to be really clear about that, so the emergence of the shortage area in world language as a challenge in Guilford also coincided
That's right.
with
Art
community
teachers.
members who were
Right.
asking for an increase in art
Art,
time.
right.
And so, right, we were looking at this forced choice.
Right.
How do you have more of art without taking less of something else? And at that time, we were struggling to keep 4 FTEs fully staffed. So we thought that by reducing to 2, we might have a better chance of keeping 2 positions fully staffed over the 4. Now, to be really honest, we made the positions more challenging because it's traveling between 2 schools. So on the one hand, we were only looking for 2 teachers, not 4. But on the other hand, when a district somewhere else offers a teacher a full-time job in one building rather than 2, we know that's more attractive. And
Right.
so whether we exacerbated the problem or anticipated the problem, I'm not sure. But the problem kept getting worse. And so now
Right.
we're having trouble
Okay.
filling either of the 2 existing positions.
Which doesn't
And so
sound
part of the
unique to us.
conversation then also has to be about getting back to 4 full-time positions. Would they be more attractive? But again, the school day is of limited minutes, and if we're going to grow this back up, I don't think we're going to take art back to where it was. I don't
Right.
see us
Yeah.
reducing music contact time. I don't see us doing, so we need to look at all of that. And a recommendation to extend the school day would come with all kinds of implications to the budget, to the contract, and to the school day calendar, which we just spent about 4 years looking at on the other end. So we've got a lot to consider.
What did we do at the other 2 elementary schools this year that didn't have a language? We did some kind of STEM program, right?
Yes, we essentially created a STEM opportunity that was pulled together at the last moment. And again, right, we also kept the posting open, and so we thought we might need to do that for the first few weeks and then the first half of the year, and then we realized we were doing it for the full year. So making a decision more definitively this year just allows us to plan more thoughtfully rather than always trying to stay a few weeks
I did
ahead.
hear really good feedback. I have a 4th grader, so it's kind of like, I kind of run in the elementary school circles, and I had a lot of people say, like, that program is great, so.
I agree. A number of people said that they enjoyed that opportunity, and so one of the really hard conversations needs to be, do we stop trying to return world language and do we do something else that leans into technology and we had a board member not that long ago that was continuously reminding us that coding is a language too, and maybe you could offer computer coding at a younger grade rather than a world language, a different kind of world language. So again, this is a Band-Aid decision that we're making now, and we will try to be really thoughtful, and you're all bringing up really good suggestions that we need to wrestle with and that we need to weigh next year.
All right.
I'm bummed.
Me too. This meeting's full of highs and lows.
And then you said you wanted to.
I did have one other item that I just want to add, and this is just a clarification or a correction of something that was said at the last meeting. I do want to take a minute to note that during public comment at our last meeting, there was a comment made from that podium that a 9-year-old in our school system was taught by a classroom teacher how to pleasure himself. Now, I believe that comment was referring to masturbation, and I know that the person sharing the comment had no firsthand knowledge. The commenter said overtly, I was told that this happened. I want to be clear that that is false, that is inaccurate. We have no information that anything of that nature ever occurred in one of our schools, nor would it. And I want to be clear that false hearsay information that is shared at a public meeting will be called out and corrected. And I just wanted to take a moment to make it clear to anybody who heard that or read it in our last minutes, that did not occur.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
And that completes my report for the evening.
Okay, excellent. So that moves us on to number 9 on the board agenda. The first is to act on personnel items. There are a few here, so let me walk through them. We're first being asked to ratify the appointment of the following teachers. Jamie Fernicola, full-time at Guilford Public Schools, school psychologist. Matthew Sanchez, full-time Adams and Baldwin Middle Schools course music teacher. Kimberly Wojcik, Cox Elementary School kindergarten teacher. Kelly Morin, an Adams Middle School art teacher. Michelle Lepre, a Baldwin Middle School special education teacher. And Claire Gravina, a Lakes Elementary School speech language pathologist. We did see Claire's name last month, but this is coming back to us. It was previously appointed as a one-year position. This is now just a full position coming in. So is there a motion to ratify the appointment of these 6 teachers?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Dick. Okay, so that's a unanimous vote. We're being asked to ratify the appointment of the following administrator: Catherine Kennedy, Guilford High School Assistant Principal. Is there a motion to ratify Catherine Kennedy's appointment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Dr. Hirsch, as well. So that's unanimous. And then we are being asked to ratify the resignation of the following 5 teachers: Kelly Potter, Lakes Elementary School speech language pathologist with 3 years of service in Guilford. Rex Sturdivant, Jones Elementary School music teacher with 4 years of service in Guilford. Carolyn Beatty, Lakes and Leet Elementary School special education teacher, 1 year of service in Guilford. Maddie Colavolpi, Cox and Lakes Elementary Schools World Language, 1 year of service in Guilford. And Samantha Celentano, Jones Elementary School special education teacher, 6 years of service in Guilford. We thank all of them for the years that they've given the Guilford Public Schools. So is there a motion to ratify the resignation of these 5 teachers?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Dr. Hirsch. Okay, thank you. All right. 9.3. So we've done 9.2 already, the open choice. 9.3 is to approve a donation of $2,887 from the Calvin Leet PTO for the purchase of musical instruments, which include piano, bongo, drums, tambourines, and piano casters. Is there a motion to accept this donation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Dick, is that you as well? Thank you. Excellent. So that's 7.
That's great.
Yeah,
It is great.
that was terrific. And a thank you to, in this case, the Calvin Leet PTO.
Yeah.
And to all our PTOs who do quite a bit in terms of fundraising and supporting our schools. Okay, 9.4 is to receive for possible action a resolution on the capital equipment lease. So we're going to have 2 votes here regarding our lease that we, our capital equipment lease that we take on every year. The first is to approve a resolution to authorize a lease purchase agreement. So can I have a motion to authorize this lease purchase agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Hurst, thank you. So this again is authorizing our ability to move forward with the capital equipment lease. For those who might not be familiar with this, we take on a lease every year, which allows us to purchase equipment to update technology equipment, laptops, Chromebooks, all kinds of things that help us keep our technology for the purpose of student learning up to date.
And this year's lease also includes a maintenance truck as well
That's right.
as those important technology purchases, which also at times include technological infrastructure as well as the hands-on devices.
As the hands-on devices. Our second vote is a request to the board to waive the bid requirement and award the bid for the capital lease. So there are, and Mrs. Trudeau may feel free to interrupt me at any point, but we've had this now for at least a couple of years where there are fewer and fewer companies who will take on a lease of this relatively small size. Mrs. Trudeau went out to companies again this year. Only a few companies again kind of do this type of lease. We only received one proposal this year. It is the company that we used last year, so we have positive experience with them. And so we are being asked then to waive the bidding process and go with Cogent Leasing and Financing Incorporated. Is there anything else, Mrs. Trudeau, that you think would be important to mention at this time?
I would just add that the annual payments on this lease come in below what we budgeted for.
Oh, perfect.
And
Yes,
so-
I would.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so we do have interest rates payments at 4.29%. And as Dr. Freeman just noted, that does go below what we had budgeted.
And Dr. Best, Tracy, if I could add.
Sure.
Technically, the Board of Ed cannot enter into lease
is
without the
important.
Board of Selectmen's approval, and I've already received that from them at their last meeting in June.
Wonderful.
The Board of Selectmen have already given us the go-ahead with this
Terrific.
process.
So you just need then our vote to move this
continue
forward.
on with the process.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any questions before I call the vote? Okay. So again, we are being asked to waive the bid requirement and award the bid for the capital equipment lease to Cogent Leasing and Financing Incorporated. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. That's everybody. That's unanimous. Wonderful. All right. 9.6 is to act on the extension of the superintendent's contract and compensation for the 2023-24 year. Again, for those who may be unfamiliar, Dr. Freeman has a 3-year contract with us, and much like superintendent contracts across the state, every year we negotiate and then vote on compensation for the coming academic year, and then take the opportunity to add or extend the contract to keep it at a 3-year contract. This process is preceded by an evaluation of the superintendent. This happens in a couple of steps. First, and these happen by statute, allowed to happen within executive sessions. We as a board meet with Dr. Freeman and talk with him about his evaluation. He shares thoughts as well. We then meet together just as a board and continue that discussion. And then we engage in a contract negotiation to move the contract forward. I will share, and if any of my colleagues want to add, they should certainly feel free. We continue to be extremely pleased with Dr. Freeman's performance for this district. Very pleased with the work that he has done with the place that our school district is in with the various ways, and I'll name open choice given tonight's meeting, that Dr. Freeman continues to lead us forward in really positive initiatives. I said this last year and I'll repeat it again. This coming year will be Dr. Freeman's 13th year with us. That is an extraordinary longevity, and when you have a really excellent curricular and management leader at the helm, the stability that kind of longevity provides is really, really remarkable, and we are quite lucky to have it. We had an opportunity to consider Dr. Freeman's performance as we were considering the contract. We are always aware, and Dr. Freeman's contract notes this, that our decisions are not just made on the merit of the superintendent, but we try to keep in mind also kind of the financial place we are in the district. We are well aware that the last two budgets that have been supported and passed by the community have come in higher proportionally than in prior years, given the pandemic, the changes in our economy in general. So we're keeping that in mind as well. But we have landed in our negotiation together with Dr. Freeman on providing or offering a 3.25% increase in salary and tax sheltered annuity. And in addition, we will be adding $3,000 to the teacher retirement board contribution that Dr. Freeman must make every year. Do any of my colleagues have anything to add to that?
I think you said it all. I think,
Yeah.
you know, from a business decision, if you look at it that way, you know, you've done an exemplary job leading this district, and you know, I speak for myself when I say this is a very easy decision.
Agreed.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would just think, you know, the process is always really thorough, and it's a really open dialogue, and I always appreciate that. I don't take that for granted. And that, you know, obviously we're very pleased. And I also appreciate you understanding the fiscal responsibility that we carry every year. And it's been tough in the community across the country for folks, and so that was cognizant in what we were doing. But it's a remarkable relationship we all have with you, and we really appreciate all you do for our kids and our teachers and our community.
Thank you.
I think the last thing I'll say, and then we'll move forward, there are 8 kind of goals set out in Dr. Freeman's contract, and they're things we reflect on when we get to this point every year. One of them, and Ms. Rader, you're making me think of this, is the superintendent's relationship with the board, and we have, I'll speak for myself, really had a terrific, the board I think has had a terrific relationship with Dr. Freeman. One of the things I've always appreciated is, you know, a board comes together, and we're lucky with Dr. Hirsch as one of our members, with such an extraordinary background and expertise in education. But the rest of us in this typical boards of ed across the state come from a whole variety of professions and expertise. And one of the things that Dr. Freeman has done in the 12 years that I've been on the board is really brought us in to the process of in a detailed way, learning about what goes on in this district. We've been invited on learning walks where we're literally walking with some of the professionals in our building and hearing detailed reflection on what they see in classrooms, for instance. So that's been very valuable. Another of those goals is Dr. Freeman's relationship with the community. And I have regularly remarked on the fact that I find that the time and energy, Paul, that you put into those relationships is so important, whether it's with our first selectman or the people on the selectman board, other agencies in our community. Those relationships all have a really, when they go well, all have a really positive impact on our school district and on our students. And then I think we all continue to be quite pleased with your curricular leadership, which has made Guilford one of the top districts in the state. So I will stop and ask for a motion then to approve the superintendent's compensation for the 2023-24 year, which includes a 3.25% increase in salary and tax-sheltered annuity, and a $3,000 addition to the TRB contribution.
So moved.
Second?
All right, and I'm going to take, thank you, I'm going to take a roll call. Dr. Hirsch? Can you hear me? We're voting on the contract. You may not be able to hear me. Voting on the contract.
Yes.
Oh, you, yes, I'm so sorry, I'm not hearing. Okay, Mr. Petra?
Yes.
Ms. Peck?
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Brader?
Yes.
Mr. Delventura?
Yes.
Ms. Faulkner?
Yes.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you all.
Absolutely.
May I just
Yeah, we
add
have
that we
to
do
do
the
the
extension as well?
Oh, that's next.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
don't worry, I haven't forgotten. It's a two-part vote.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, absolutely. So the second piece of this is, again, to vote for an extension of the superintendent's contract, which would then add back a third year. So I'm going to ask for a motion for the extension of the contract.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I've got 7 there, so that's unanimous as well. Thank you. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you there. I had it as a two-part all along. Wonderful.
May I just thank you all again for your continued confidence. I look forward to 3 more years of partnering with this board. Tonight, again, is just an example of what makes Guilford a really special school district. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Ms. Peck, there is a very long list
We have a lot.
of policies in front of us, so I am
Yes.
turning the agenda over to you.
Okay. So the first line item is 9.71, which is revisions to the bylaw 9430, order of business. So this is, I think the easiest thing will be for me to just run through it. This is basically just the definition of how our public meetings will run. So we're making a couple of clarification points, not really anything of a significant change. Call to order will be number 1, Pledge of Allegiance, act on minutes. Changes come here in public comments. So public comments for topics on the agenda will be the first section, as it is now, so that members of the public can address the board on anything we may be voting on that night, so that your opinions can be heard by us prior to a vote. The way this reads, public comments for topics on agenda, limited to 3 minutes per comment for a total of 30 minutes. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to inform the board about their views. It is the role of the board to listen to public comments. The board will refrain from answering questions or engaging in dialogue with the commenters. The rest of the meeting will continue as typical, with communications, student representatives, the superintendent's report, the typical board agenda, reports of the committees, and then we will have a second public comment section as we currently do. This is going to be limited to 3 minutes per comment for a total of 30 minutes as well. And likewise, public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to inform the board about their views. This will be on any topic, not limited just to topics on our agenda for the evening. And again, it is the role of the board to listen to public comments. The board will refrain from answering questions or engaging in dialogue with the commenters. And then we will, at our discretion, be able to extend that 30-minute period if we in fact have not covered everything that folks want to say, but that will be up to the discretion of the chairperson. We are then adding an additional line item, which will be item number 12 in all of our meetings, which is closing comments from board members and or administrators. And then we move on to number 13, which is adjournment.
And It is my understanding, and please correct me, because I know I was away on vacation during the last policy meeting, that number 12, if there are questions that come up that are kind of easily answered about a school calendar or about something like that, at number 12, we could certainly do that. And then make clear to other commenters that have questions that require us to do a little bit of research or check into someone, that we will get back to people. Okay.
I think it's also important to know that it offers clarification.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right. It'll be an opportunity, right, to offer clarification or if needed.
Right, so really that it's designed so that we as a board are not taking time away from public comment so that we can hear from the public.
Right.
Exactly right.
And then we have our own comment section if there's something that we want to
Perfect.
address.
Excellent. So this is a receive for action, possible action.
This item was before the board,
Right.
I believe, at your April or May meeting. There was a lot of
We pulled it back.
conversation. It went
Yep.
back to the policy committee, and so it is here tonight for action if the board is ready. Yep.
Excellent.
I motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Dr. Hirsch as well? Okay, so that, we've approved the revisions to 9430 order of business.
Thank you. Okay, the next is pretty similar. So this is policy 1138, so now this is the policy. And this falls under community relations. And what the changes to policy 1138 reflect goals for public comment at board meetings. So I'm just going to highlight the changes since most of this policy is remaining as it has been. Comments by members of the public shall be limited to 3 minutes per person in each of the sections 4 and 11 that I just discussed in my last comment. We will, as a board, be able to extend the period for public comment. If it's a budget conversation that folks haven't been able to get all of their thoughts out in 30 minutes, we as a board can extend for another 15 minutes if we so choose. So we do have the right to extend that. Once, this is a new item, once all of the interested parties have spoken, an additional 3 minutes may be granted to a speaker at the discretion of the chair if time permits. So often we've had speakers come up, they haven't quite finished a comment, they've waited for everyone else to speak, and then they've had another 3 minutes. We are now making that part of our actual policy, that we will give people an additional 3 minutes at the discretion of the chair. Additional changes. The public is advised that concerns about specific district employees are most appropriately addressed to that employee's district supervisor. So this board is not necessarily supposed to hear specific employee comments. That should be something that would go to district administrators before it comes to this board. And that about sums up everything that we have discussed for months on end about public comment at board meetings.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any other of the people on the policy committee wanting to make comments?
No, you covered it all. Again, this is, for the viewing public, this always has a, kind of a policy has 2 parts, and this is the second part of what we just passed.
Right. All right, so is there a motion to approve the updates to policy 1138?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, okay, thank you, that's unanimous. And perhaps an unnecessary reminder, right? Public comment at this first of our meetings every month is one of several ways that we receive essentially input from the public. So please note, we are available by email. We are welcome to have open to have conversations with people. This really just allows us to kind of structure and try to give kind of equal opportunity to people during public comment. And as Ms. Peck noted, to make sure that we are in listening mode. So, all right. So now there are a number of receive items from the policy committee.
Okay, so the bulk of what we are going to cover now is really just policy changes reflecting state requirements.
Okay.
There's not going to be anything too profoundly Guilford-centric.
Okay.
So we can kind of run through these relatively quickly, and then people will have the next month to kind of mull over these revisions.
He coughed.
He coughed? Okay. Okay, so the first one is policy 5114 on ages of attendance. The significant change here is that a student 5 or 6 years of age shall not be considered truant if the parent or person having control over the child has appeared at the district office and exercised the option of not sending the child to school at 5 or 6 years of age. So this is just simply an age change. And then a student who is 18 years of age or older may withdraw from school. So such a student may personally appear at the school district office and sign a withdrawal form. So that's about it in this one. There's nothing other than age change that we don't have any control over. This is state mandated. So you guys can take a look through this and we can talk about it next time, but there's not much we can.
So I
anyway.
have one question, given recent legislation just passed at the state level, which won't impact us until the September 2024 school year.
That will be on the policy committee's agenda this fall.
Okay, and you're already predicting what I'm going to say, right? Which is the age 5 by January, which is in a year going to be age 5 by September.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. And then I just had another question. Sorry, I know you have a long list in front of you. Number 3 on the first page, and then maybe it's the only place. Oh, it'll happen in the next one. Says until June 30th, 2023, etc. Do we still need that if we're now on July 10th, 2023? Is there a reason to keep that in?
I'd have to check.
I know that the policy committee was working on this
Right.
before, but I'm just wondering.
We have beginning on July 1st.
Right, so do
I
we
see what you're
need,
saying.
do we need
still
the
to
number
have that
3
in the
ahead of
policy?
time?
Do we need any
because
of it, really?
Because it refers to something that's now passed.
Right, or if it just starts with a student 17
If it just
years,
starts
because
with-
we are
Yeah,
all,
Yeah, we can.
I think
Okay.
we just started
Just-
with the
I'm just-
letter A.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think that's
okay.
a great suggestion.
All right, excellent. So that was policy
That was
5114. Next.
Okay, next is policy 5118, and this is attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. So again, these are state mandated changes to our policy.
Okay.
There's really not much to
Yeah,
discuss
that's it.
there.
There's one addition. Okay.
All right. So then we've got the regulation for 5118 on attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. So this is really just the definitions.
This is really long,
This is
I must
long.
say, as someone who read
Do
it
we have to go
yesterday.
through every line item tonight, or can we post it?
No, we can't. No, we
We
don't,
have to.
I mean, I think Ms. Peck can
I
share
don't
with us
think we
what
need
she
to go
wants
through
us
with
to.
it. We don't need to do that at
If
all.
anyone
Right,
who's
this is a
read them
receive.
already.
You guys can
I
receive
think
them and
it's
read.
right.
We're just receiving. If
Great.
anyone has a question, which is why I was asking, I figured I'd ask now about a question that might be removed instead of, but we don't have to go through.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, as long as everyone's read them through and then again before our next meeting.
And again, most of this isn't anything Guilford specific anyway.
It's
Right.
all state mandated. Okay,
All right, this is a long scroll to get to the
that
next
is
one.
it's a very long policy.
Okay, finally. The next one is policy 5114 on administering medications to students. Not a lot of change here. It just discusses self-administration of controlled medications. Again, that's state regulation that we're changing.
Okay.
And then it's the regulation for 5514, which is administering medication to students.
Okay.
So those are the regs for it. This one's long too. All right. Okay, our next one is revisions to policy 5005 on bullying and violence. This one we may want to take a closer look at. I think we should all read through it. We can have a discussion about it next time. I'm still scrolling through the policy on medication to get to it, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And this is another policy that has, I believe, Mrs. Rader can correct me if I'm wrong, has been updated again, so we'll be
Again,
revisit.
I was just gonna say the
Revisiting
same
the
thing.
fall.
In that
SB
one-
one,
yeah.
this mega education bill, there's more on this.
Yep.
So this will get updated again.
In the
So
fall.
although, yes, so we can either vote this and then know we're gonna have to vote again in a few months. It's
Correct.
totally at your discretion, yeah.
Thank you.
So this defines the Safe School Climate Plan on prohibition against bullying and teen dating violence.
Okay.
And then we've got the regulations for 5005.
Okay, so there's and as we all know, right, so often the regulation is a detailed and operationalization of the, okay. So two more than the 5005 policy and regulation?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Next three are easy.
Then the next one is cyberbullying, which is to remove the policy 5006. Cyberbullying is now going to wind up part of our other bullying
Okay.
policies, so we're just removing that one. Same thing with the removal of policy 5122, attendance and truancy. It's getting absorbed into 5118. And
And the same for
And the regulation.
And the same
Yeah.
for the reg?
And then the same for 5122, the regulation.
Okay, so, so then each of us needs to kind of thoroughly, particularly those of us not on policy committee, thoroughly go through all of these policies and regulations for the many updates that are in them, and reach out to you if we have questions in the meantime.
And Jason.
And Jason, okay, thank you. And then we'll be acting on all of these, including the removal of the last three, because they are then no longer necessary.
Correct.
Okay, terrific. The policy committee was obviously
Busy.
quite busy. Holy smokes.
Well, I'm
Excellent.
really happy that we were able to get through the order of business and the public comment. I feel like we've been
Yes.
talking about that for a long
Yes.
time.
Yes,
Yeah, that was good
absolutely.
work.
Okay, well, thank you, all of you, for that work. Okay, we are now up to number 11, reports of committees.
I don't have to
Policy
talk again.
committee. Do you have anything else to report?
No, I mean, that really covers a lot of what we discussed in our last policy meeting a couple
Okay.
of weeks ago.
Terrific, thank you. Mr. Del Ventura, anything else about the operations
I've got
committee?
some good updates. Yeah, we just had our operations meeting prior to this meeting. Dining services is in a very healthy position, very good year overall. I'll add that for the upcoming school year, all students will be able to enjoy a new point of sale system. So every transaction that you're having for your meal will be done on a new system, so we're looking forward to that. I will say, in light of no more free school lunches, that urging all applicable families to, if eligible, sign up for free and reduced meals. Can't urge that enough, especially as we enter the school year. As we look at tuition, nearing the close of the books, we have a slight surplus, which is very, very good. And then moving into facilities, as always, come summertime, our facilities team, we should all be very grateful. They are working nonstop on a lot of projects. Just some worth noting. Baldwin, for those of you that don't know, is getting a full kitchen renovation. So that kitchen is completely torn up right now and under renovation. Also happy to report that the Adams Middle School tennis courts are now done, which allows us to turn our resources to the construction of the new tennis courts at the high school. So those of you that might have drove by this afternoon saw that is under complete renovation right now. As well as our Cox Media Room is under full reconstruction right now with a very big project. And coming in August, Melissa Jones School will have a new gym floor. So lots of things getting done by our facilities team.
Excellent. Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, Dr. Hirsch, do you have anything to share?
Not at this moment.
Not at this moment, okay. And I will note that in July and August, there is generally a pause on committee work, except for the Operations Committee that continues unless there's a reason to hold a special meeting. Any liaisons to town committees have reports?
No.
None related, okay. And no one at the Learn Board of Directors. All right, we are coming towards the end of the meeting. We are at item 12 for public. If anyone in the public would like to address the board, this doesn't have to be specific to the board agenda. We ask you to come up to the podium. Give your name and address. We're working on the current agenda, which is 4 minutes of time. And we will ask, give kind of a reminder at 3:30. But we welcome anyone who'd like to address us. Hello.
Hi, Anita Porto, 135 Mirror Lane. If I recall, at last month's meeting, you had all decided that you were going to take the summer to read over 5 books that have been challenged and discuss it at the September meeting.
That's correct.
Well, I wanted you all to know that Peggy, Britt, and I have started a banned book club. We got an overwhelming response from the community. We have about 30 people right now who are in the book club. Some of them are here. And we have another club waiting. We're just waiting to find the space. So people are very eager to read the 5 books that have been challenged. And I would just like to say for tonight, book we just read was Flamer. I feel like this book is a necessity, and to not have it in our school would be a crime. That's because what it actually is a suicide prevention book. The only thing that I've heard about this book from these meetings came from 2 pages of this 365-page book. There are 2 pages at a Boy Scout camp where the protagonist goes to a tent, which is very dark, and he says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And in that tent, they tell them that they're masturbating into a bottle, and whoever doesn't do it has to drink what's in the bottle. The protagonist in the book is disgusted by this, a little nervous, but he leaves and goes to his tent to bed. I have been told by other people that this indeed has been something that Boy Scouts have at least talked about doing, whether or not they have really done it. That's it in this entire book, which is about a kid who is struggling with his religious background, his physical self, he's overweight. It's just all the things that we all have struggled with, at least one of the things in this book. And right on the top of the book, it says this book will save lives. It is semi-autobiographical. The wonderful author, you can find him all over online, Mike Corrado, did attempt suicide or thought about attempting suicide and stopped himself just in time. I truly do believe this book will save lives. I believe that the challenge, I lost the page. The challenge is that the books may cause unwanted accidental exposure to sexually graphic material between children. I personally don't.
Oh, we're 1-4, sorry. I'm sorry, you're at 3. I forgot we're still at 4.
Keep going.
I didn't see that as sexually graphic, but even if it was, I believe that the possibility of saving a life, if there is a kid who can read this book and find some solace in it, and it is written very sensitively, it sure as heck is worth somebody coming across some unwanted accidental material about boys masturbating, because I think in high school, they're already aware of that. And the only other thing I want to say is I can't tell you how much I appreciate and love you guys. It's just been incredible watching what you've gone through. And you do it with grace and dignity, and I am so proud to say I'm from Guilford. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Danielle Finch. I live at 30 Andy Lane. So I was planning to start by speaking about the book Flamer, which I'm also reading as part of the band book club, but Anita spoke so eloquently and echoed so many of the things I felt about this book. And after having read it and having been following along with these meetings since the beginning of the school year, just very shocked at the malice I heard in the voices of the people speaking about this book at these meetings. I don't believe their motivations are sincere. Book bans are far from new. They have a long and sordid history in our country and around the world, and I want to be clear that the individual challenging these books is quick to say they don't want the books banned, but that's the obvious intent, to make them less available to our students. We all know that the books on the most banned book lists are by individuals who identify as LGBTQ. They are about characters who are LGBTQ. They are about topics such as racism and poverty. Toni Morrison, the author of The Bluest Eye, which is one of the books challenged here, is a Pulitzer and Nobel Prize winner and one of our most celebrated American authors. She's also a Black woman. I feel there's a very dark undercurrent to these individuals' attempts to stop our children from reading about people or topics that challenge their individual worldview. We see this happening all over the country, even with textbooks. Children in Texas and Florida are getting a completely different version of history than our kids here in Connecticut, and that's really devastating to me. The individual bringing these challenges claimed the concern is related to exposure to sexual content. And if their desire is to remove all references to sex that our middle and high school students might be exposed to, I say to them, good luck, because a few books in a high school library are certainly not where most of our kids are being exposed to these topics. I really encourage anyone watching this board meeting or listening to read the books yourselves. Decide for yourselves if you think your teenager would be harmed by this literature. And even if you personally disapprove of one of these books, is it your place to prevent the rest of our children from having access to them? And ask yourselves if it warrants a dangerous precedent of book banning that these individuals would hope to set. So I really ask the board to reject these requests outright. And lastly, I would just like to thank, from the bottom of my heart, all of our librarians, because they have been taken through the ringer about this. And it's completely inappropriate because the amazing work they do, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude, both our librarians in the school system and also our town librarians. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
David Malillo, also 135 Mirror Lane. And the first and foremost thing I want to do is thank you. The intelligence, the sensitivity, the courage, that the caring that have guided the superintendent and our board is remarkable, and it actually is inspiring to see. You've been ahead of the curve on this issue, and I think that that's fantastic, so I really do appreciate what all of you do to make that happen. I was, believe it or not, just before I left home from this, I saw on a national television network there was a superintendent from the Tulsa area of Oklahoma. And his statement was, you could talk about all the facts and you could talk about all the numbers, but when talking about the Tulsa massacre, you don't have to mention skin color. And I was so like, my God, you know? And then it's like, who are we protecting? Not the people that were the victims of the Tulsa massacre, you know, it's the others. And then that made me think about some of the stuff you guys have had to deal with over the last couple of years. And it's sort of like, you know, are we going to protect gay kids who are struggling and fighting for existence, or are we going to be protecting people who happen to run into, the drawings do not make it sexually explicit. If you look in that book, there's nothing in there that would meet that definition. So I think the two things connect, and I think they connect in why are we protecting who, being the overmost things, you know, if we're worried about minorities who've put through a lot of suffering, and then we're worried about, oh, that's going to make the other kids upset. Well, it's like there's a point at which you could be sensitive to both, but there's a point at which you're really looking at it backwards. So thank you for the chance to speak, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. I will now ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Everyone.